everyone. Hi, I'm Becky, the Executive Director at the Hawaii International Film Festival. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you all to this panel today. Thank you so much for joining us and being with us. This panel is our New American Perspectives panel with 5 filmmakers from that program. Our New American Perspectives program at HIFF is presented by the Vilcek Foundation. We are so extremely grateful for their support and this incredible program that we're able to offer year after year. The New American Perspectives program shines a really big spotlight on the contributions of immigrant and foreign-born filmmakers to contemporary cinema in the United States. I really highly suggest you check out all the films in this program. They are incredible. Some of the filmmakers are returning filmmakers to HIFF, and we're so thrilled to see that as they continue to succeed in their careers. We have an amazing slate. A lot of these films are available online, some in drive-ins and in theaters, so please be sure to check out our New Americans Perspective program at the 40th Annual Hawaii International Film Festival presented by Holly Kalani. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to kick things off. And kicking things off today is the inspiring Liz Boylan from Vilcek Foundation.
Hi, so good to see you, Becky, and thank you to you for that wonderful introduction. As Becky mentioned, I'm Liz Boylan and I work with the Vilcek Foundation. Our foundation was established in 2000 with the mission of celebrating the contributions of foreign-born artists and innovators to the arts, culture, and society in the United States. It was founded by Jan and Maritza Vilcek, who themselves immigrated to the States as refugees from the former Czechoslovakia in 1965. And the foundation is a way for them to honor the opportunities that immigrating afforded them and to provide support for other foreign-born persons working in the arts and sciences in the United States. One of the ways our foundation accomplishes our mission is through partnerships and grants to organizations like the Hawaii International Film Festival. Since 2007, the foundation has worked with HIFF to present a program that highlights and shares the work of foreign-born artists from around the globe. The partnership came out of the shared values between our organizations, celebrating diversity and building equity and representation in the arts and filmmaking. And it's really exciting for us to do this year as HIFF celebrates their 40th anniversary. With all the challenges that 2020 has presented us, I think the arts and artists and innovators have really persevered, and film especially has remained a really accessible form of art, which is so integral and so important to how we share and communicate with one another right now. The stories shared as part of the program this year, from verite documentaries like 76 Days and First Vote, which let us see the challenges the world is facing through another's eyes, to really personal narrative features like Minari, Mogul Mowgli, Death of Nintendo, and to films that just take us on a ride and offer us some escapism, like Shadow in the Cloud. The festival and this year's program really remind us how critical storytelling is as part of how we relate to one another in the world. So I'm delighted to be able to speak on behalf of the Vilcek Foundation now, and I will introduce Anna Page from HIFF to introduce all of this year's filmmakers. And I just want to extend all of our gratitude from the foundation to Becky, to Anna, to the Jen May and the entire team at HIFF, and to all of our filmmakers who are part of the program this year: Roseanne Liang, Yi Chen, Valerie Castillo Martinez, Hao Wu, Bassam Tariq, and Stephen Yen, who is not part of this panel, but was one of our artists with the film Minari this year. So thank you.
Aloha, everyone. Thank you so much, Liz and Becky, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you so much for all of this year's filmmakers for joining us today for this panel discussion. We're really grateful to have you all here with us. So before we get into our discussion portion, I am going to give quick introductions to all of our panelists who are with us today. So bear with me, panelists, as I introduce you. Okay, first we have director Roseanne Liang, and she is the director and writer of a wonderful film that we're showing this year called Shadow in the Cloud. If you have not gotten a chance to see that, we do have a drive-in screening of the film next week, which will be very cool. So definitely check that out. Roseanne enjoys the cut and thrust of genre, social resonance, and culture. Her feature film, My Wedding and Other Secrets, is the most successful New Zealand Asian feature film to date, based on her festival hit documentary, Banana in a Nutshell. Roseanne has also made award-winning works across TV comedy and short film, including Berlin-winning Take 3, cult favorite web series Flat 3/Friday Night Bites, and Sundance South by Southwest breakout action short Do No Harm. Roseanne's latest U.S. action thriller feature film, Shadow in the Cloud, stars Chloe Grace Moretz and Nick Robinson, and it premiered last month at 2 months ago at the Toronto International Film Festival, where it won the People's Choice Midnight Madness Award. So a big, big welcome to Roseanne. Thank you so much for being with us today. And next on our panel today, we have Director Yi Chen. Director Yi Chen is the director of First Vote, which some of you may have caught at our HIFF Summerfest. We also featured it as part of that program and had a wonderful talk with Yi there. Yi is a documentary filmmaker based in Washington, D.C. She is a Soros Equality Fellow and D.C. Arts and Humanities Fellow. Her debut feature, First Vote, is currently in distribution at festivals including AFI Docs, CamFest, LA Asian Pacific Film Festival, Houston AAPI Film Festival, Netherlands Film Festival, and HIFF. Yi holds an MFA in Film and Media Arts from American University, my alma mater, and taught at George Mason University's Film and Video Studies program. So big, big welcome to Yi as well. Thank you so much for being with us. Next up, we have Valerie Castillo-Martinez. Valerie is the writer and producer of the absolutely charming and wonderful Death of Nintendo that we are screening at HIFF this year. As I did not mention, but First Vote and Death of Nintendo available streaming all festival long until the 29th, so definitely catch those if you have not already. Valerie was born in the Philippines and moved to the U.S. in 2001. She has written, directed, and produced several projects set in the U.S. and international locations. She started her company IndieFlip to make films that deal with underrepresented subjects and cross-cultural themes. Her emphasis in innovative storytelling, collaboration, and international co-productions, highlighting diversity and inclusion with underlying social themes, has led to some of her film successes. Death of Nintendo is her first feature film as writer and producer. It held its world premiere at the Berlinale 2020 and continues its festival rounds. So big aloha to Valerie. Thank you so much for being with us today. Next up, we have Bassam Tariq, who is the director and writer of Mogul Mowgli, another fantastic film in our program this year, also streaming all festival long, so please check out Mogul Mowgli if you have not. Bassam is a writer and director. Mogul Mowgli is his debut narrative feature and stars Riz Ahmed, who also co-wrote the film. The film premiered also at Berlinale 2020 this year and won the International Critics Prize. He is a TED Fellow and was named Filmmaker Magazine's 25 New Faces of Independent Film. His previous film, Ghosts of Sugarland, won the Short Film Jury Prize at Sundance, was shortlisted for the Oscars, and released as a Netflix original. His first feature documentary, These Birds Walk, premiered at South by Southwest and is distributed by Oscilloscope Laboratories. So big welcome, Bassam. Thank you for being with us today in the afternoon as you're running around and busy with errands, I imagine. Last, but definitely not least, I want to introduce our final filmmaker with us today, and that is director Hao Wu, who is the director of 76 Days, which also just premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival, and is showing all month long on the HIFF streaming platform. How is technology executive turned filmmaker who takes a raw and human approach to storytelling in an era when culture evolves online and across borders. Wu's award-winning documentary films have received support from Ford Foundation, Just Films, ITVS, Sundance Tribeca, and international broadcasters. 76 Days, Wu's latest work and first feature documentary on the COVID-19 pandemic to play at a film festival, held its world premiere at Toronto International Film Festival in September 2020. And I also want to note that another one of Howe's films, People's Republic of Desire, was screened at HIFF and won our jury prize that year for the Kalkahoku Award. So we are very, very excited to welcome Howe with us today. Although I wish we could show you our big aloha and welcome and give you leis here in person in Hawaii. We're still very grateful to have all of you with us this afternoon and evening, depending on your location. So, I really want to start by asking about the film that you're presenting here at HIFF from each of the filmmakers today. So I was thinking I would start with Roseanne. If you could each tell us a little bit in a few sentences what your film is about that you're presenting at HIFF, and what is really the story that you wanted to tell with the film.
So, hello, thank you for that introduction, Anna. It's a real pleasure. Thank you to HIFF and the Vilcek Foundation for having us as a panel today. And great to meet you, strangers and brothers and sisters in arms in the film industry as well. My film's called Shadow in the Cloud. It is a bonkers genre mash of a movie about a woman who faces adversity in a world that is packed with adversities for her. It's set in the 1940s Allied Air Force, and she takes a mysterious package that she has to transport. And things go wrong for her. Things go very wrong in a very entertaining way. What story did I want to tell? I think I was interested in the wells of strength that are inside all of us. This whole idea that we're all capable of superhuman or superhero type traits, but the messy ways that they come about and the adversity that unlocks them. That's basically the film in a nutshell.
Oh, thanks so much. It's a very, very exciting and amazing film. I just want to encourage everybody. Drive-in is kind of like one of the best venues for this. So if we can get a chance next weekend, definitely grab a ticket. Next, I would like to go to Bassam.
Hi, everybody. And likewise, with Roseanne said, it's exciting to meet everybody here. And it's sad that we all can't be together. My film is Mogul Mowgli, and it's basically it's all the insecurities that Riz Ahmed, a friend of mine, and I have had for a few years, becoming irrelevant as artists. So we just kind of threw it all together and tried to figure out how we could make sense of it. And we knew that we wanted to kind of include a musical component to it, and also something that leaned heavily into our own, I think, cultural tropes and understandings, particularly with Sufism and Central Asian mystic poetry and stuff that we always knew about, but we never really knew how to access. So that was kind of the start of it, and that's kind of what we were hoping to showcase.
Thank you so much, Bassam. It's a really unique and brilliant film. Even for all of our filmmakers here, if you haven't had a chance to see Mogul Mowgli, it's really, really stunning. I highly recommend. Next, I would like to go to Yi.
Hi, everyone. My film is First Vote. So the film follows 4 Chinese American voters from both sides of the aisle, and their first time voting and grassroots organizing from 2016 to the 2018 midterm elections in 2 battleground states, Ohio and North Carolina. So First Vote it's a story about the power and diversity of Asian American voters. And it's also a story about belonging, identity, immigrant experience, and what it means to be American.
Thanks so much, Yi. Very, very, very relevant film. Obviously, right now, we're really happy to be included twice in our program. And Yi, am I correct in that you actually got to cast your first vote here for the 2020 election?
Yes, I did.
Oh, amazing. Next, I would like to go to Valerie.
Hi, Anna, and hello to everyone at HIFF. Thanks for having me. My film, Death of Nintendo, is about 4 friends that celebrates this wonderful summer in the Philippines, full of ups and downs. And it's a coming of age about kids going through, like their first love and going through telling each other ghost stories and even going through unusual rituals like circumcision. So it's a lot of fun. I wrote it. It's based loosely on my childhood before I moved to the States. And I just wanted to, it's a product of reverie and memory and really embracing your roots and where you came from and celebrating the moments that helped form you as a person. So I think that's what I wanted to get out of that, why I wrote it and produced it.
Mm-hmm. Thanks so much, Valerie. Really delightful film. And it definitely captures a universal experience of coming of age and growing up.
Thanks.
And last but not least, I would like to introduce Hao to speak about 76 Days.
Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. So I'm the director of 76 Days. 76 Days is a look at the life in the earlier stages of COVID-19 crisis in Wuhan, China, where coronavirus was first discovered. So the film really focuses on frontline hospital workers and their patients, and it bears witness to the human resilience that persists in times of profound tragedy. I guess with 76 Days, I really want to give viewers a frontline view of what's it like to be in the hospital, in the ICU units, treating COVID-19 patients, and also trying to remind viewers that to take COVID-19 seriously, as well as to perhaps give people a glimmer of hope that humankind can still be nice to each other during a pandemic, and maybe that's the way for all of us to live through this crisis.
Thank you so much, Hal. And you are correct. It's a really, I think, important film right now for everyone from around the globe to watch as we're dealing with the crisis. And it does offer a lot of hope. It is a very hopeful film in many ways. So thank you for being with us and sharing this film with us. Okay, so to follow up, now that we've sort of gotten familiar with all of our, films in the program this year, this program is called New American Perspectives. One of the things that we love about film is how it lets us view the world through another person's eyes, or through a character's experiences. Can you describe how your own experiences shaped the stories that you want to tell? And for this question, I'm just going to leave sort of the floor open to who would like to jump in first on that question. Roseanne?
I just don't think it's possible to tell stories without who we are and our identity and our background and our experience of the world coming through the work that we tell. Like I actually think it's impossible. So my experience as a Kiwi Chinese person of Hong Kong heritage, only I can tell the story the way that I can tell it. And in the same way, everybody else on this panel can only tell the story that they can tell it through their wonderful, interesting and unique perspective. And I think what the things that, we talk about activism and we talk about these kind of words, diversity and what does that mean? It just means that the same kind of people shouldn't be telling all the stories, and that the richer out of the experience of the people who are telling the stories, the richer experience we have as the lucky people who get to consume those stories.
Yeah, so I'll jump in here to add on that as well. I think for people like us who travel between cultures, sometimes perhaps we can provide a different perspective on things. For example, like with COVID-19, a lot of the predominant narrative has been about the statistics. It's about the geopolitical finger pointing. So for me, I've been traveling back and forth between China and the US every year. And even though I lived in the US for 20 years, I still feel a strong connection to my Chinese roots and to the people in China. So I think that has a lot to play in how 76 Days, the film, turned out to be, which is a lot of sympathy, a lot of, my goal has always been trying to provide some kind of give back the agency to the people in China. Because a lot of time when we think about Chinese stories, we always have this stereotypical view of there's a big evil government that controls everybody's life, as if the people in China cannot make their choices to either to be bad or to be kind. So with 76 Days, I really try to strip away the geopolitical discussion around COVID-19, really trying to let the camera stay on the individuals and stay on how they make their choices, how they trying to connect with each other. So that's my way of showing that Chinese people, like people everywhere, can be, sorry, I'm saying the same, can be kind to each other. And also that to me, it's something that as migrants ourselves, maybe because we have that kind of understanding, because we have that desire to bridge this cultural divide in all discussions, that's something we can do, and that's something I personally would like to do.
Yes, Valerie, go for it.
Yeah, I agree a lot with what Hao had to say. I think in my perspective, I guess on the fiction side of things, and because it is a personal story, I think there's just room for more and more stories. So because our story, I mean, as Filipino Americans, our stories are already underrepresented. So I think the more and more stories that we include that has different genres or different perspectives, the more we can enrich the fabric of what's existing out there. But in my case, for Death of Nintendo, in my personal opinion, I think a lot of the films out there showing Filipinos are always kind of either shedding a light on like poverty and kind of stereotypical depictions of Filipinos, and that's not what my childhood was at all. So I just wanted to reflect a really genuine experience that just fits like just my perspective. And sure, like it's great that some people can relate to it, and I think it's just wonderful how the more specific you make a story, somehow it becomes more universal, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think that's my answer.
I'll go next. So First Vote is a very personal film, and I was born and grew up in Shanghai. I came to the United States as an immigrant. So, and when I started making the film in 2017, I was in the process of becoming a citizen and was going to vote for the first time. So I was interested in, through this film, exploring what it means to be a first-time voter. And by making this film and following these four characters, these Chinese American characters on both sides of the aisle, that it also really helped me have a deeper understanding of the democratic participation, the process, and also my own identity as Asian American, as an American. And also, one thing that I didn't realize is because of how my personal experience shaped my interest in what story to tell, I also have this very unique access. Particularly with First Vote, I was at a point that I hadn't voted, right? I was becoming a citizen, was about to vote, And characters like Lance and Sue, when I first met them, they both asked me, what party are you? And so like I feel like I don't know if I will be able to make the same film today because of the unique position I was in, that I was actually able to get access on both sides.
Oh, thank you. And Bassam.
Yeah, I think I just am echoing what everyone is saying. Just to reflect back on a few things that I heard that I resonated with, particularly this idea that like the specifics of our culture kind of can hit on these universals, and I even like and I think like yeah, so I think it's very much the same. Yeah.
Thank you all. I was going to, follow up and ask a little bit about how your cultural or your cross-cultural experiences influence your filmmaking, but I feel like everyone has really spoken to that question. And I think Roseanne kicked it off beautifully by saying that we can only tell stories from our own unique perspective. That's what makes it, our unique storytelling. We can't tell a story from somebody else's perspective. What we bring as storytellers is our background and our view. So I wanted to just sort of going back to a little bit about the origins of your stories as filmmakers. I want us to open up and go back to what drew you to film as a medium for storytelling. And can you describe to us when you knew that you wanted to use film as your medium to tell stories? And again, I will open that up to whoever would like to take that question first.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not hogging it. Honestly, someone please interrupt me if you want to say something.
You're fine.
I think I've always loved movies from when I was a kid. And just sitting in a room with a big screen and the music and the sound. It is one of the most effective, forms of mass entertainment known to man. So there's the industry part of it. But then the other thing that I realized was that it's an empathy delivering device as well, in that we're born alone, we die alone. For me, at least, living is about finding connection or trying to find connection and not feeling so alone or isolated. And film does that. When I'm sitting in a dark theater and I feel like someone's speaking to me or is interrogating me about something I've always wondered about, or showing me a world that I've never seen before, or a point of view I've not thought about, which is dangerous or exciting or sensual or whatever that is, that's an empathy connection building thing that I can't, but I don't want to do anything else. It's almost amazing to me that I've even had the audacity to try and be a filmmaker, because it's magic. It's some kind of magic to build connections between strangers. I don't know when that happened, but in adulthood, I think.
Thank you, Roseanne. Oh, there, Hal, go for it.
Okay, my answer would be very short. So I wanted to write, but my writing wasn't good enough. So I started writing screenplay. My screenplay wasn't good enough. Then I picked up a camera and started making films. And I guess my film I'm getting better and better at making, at filmmaking. So that's where I am now. But I'm continuing doing this because I really enjoy the process of putting a film together. When I see I can use sound, image, and and music to make viewers resonate with what I wanted to say, and it's an extremely satisfying process. I guess that's why I'm continuing to make films.
Thank you, Hal.
I'll go next. So for me, I'm really interested in exploring social issues, and I think it's the power of film, of a documentary, to have social impact when it gets out to the world and connects with audience in many different ways. I think that's what motivates me mostly. So Yeah, so I actually, kind of similar to Roseanne, I've always loved watching films when I was growing up, but it wasn't, it didn't really seem possible to pursue filmmaking when I was living in China, and that was more than 20 years ago. Film school was, film academy was very hard to get into, and there were only a few of them. So I actually came to the United States. I was actually getting a PhD in linguistics, and at UW-Madison. And I remember the first summer I made the mistake of taking a film class, and reading David Bordwell. He was a professor at UW-Madison. He wrote that book, Intro to Film Arts. So it was really after that class, I decided to change major and applied for film school. So that's how I ended up at American University in DC.
Amazing. We'll go for Valerie. Yep.
Yeah, I think first, how I think you shouldn't stop writing and you should keep at it because it's eventually going to be good. And if your documentary is good, that's already telling something very good with your storytelling skills. Yeah. And then for Yi, I guess it wasn't a mistake to sign up for film classes. The best thing you ever did, right, in your life. I think I'm just going to piggyback off of everybody with saying that I think we were all fans of movies to begin with. And that's what probably drew all of us into making it ourselves or figuring out how to make it ourselves. But yeah, the power of filmmaking or movies that can affect lives across different languages and, different countries and, and even beyond. I think it's like Roseanne said, it's magic. And so for me, that's why, I came to the States and I was in the military first. So that was completely the opposite direction. But, if something in you is kind of calling, beckoning for you to try it out, I think you just answer. It's in your gut and you just answer the call and, make it happen. So.
It's just great to hear everybody's thoughts on this and just think about it. And something that I wanted to just add to this, because is this problem, or not this problem, I would say this challenge of permission that's come up for me, where I think I always had a desire of making films, but it was just like, how the fuck do you get into this? It was just felt impossible for me. So the easiest thing I could do was to pick up a camera and start doing documentary, because it felt like that was the thing where there were fewer people to ask permission to get things for. And that's how I was able to do it. And I think another important thing to mention that I don't know if we're talking about as much as, but class. And I think growing up working class, and I think this happens in a lot of immigrant families and perhaps even Asian American families, is that there is an assumption, and I think it's a beautiful assumption, that we'll also take care of our parents. So I think for me, while I was in school, it was always like, okay, the economics of this all is that whatever I do, I need to then be taking care of my family. So for me, filmmaking was like this dream that you kind of had to like worry about later. So I was blessed that I think I just got really, I just always knew that I didn't want to be a bitter person. And I would see so much stuff coming out that I was like, I could do this. I could do this better. And I know I can just, if I just continue trying, I can maybe get there. So that's how I would say a lot of this happened for me. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that, but I won't deny the luck that's in this, because I see so many incredibly talented filmmakers, and I won like people that are older that didn't get the opportunities that perhaps I'm getting now in an era where Trump was president and there was so much white guilt that people were like, okay, crap, we should give, that brown kid some money to go make something now, right? Whereas in the past when, it was a bit harder to get things made, and there were all these, I would say older artists that tried so hard to make things, and unfortunately would never get the resources they needed. And now I think it's getting a bit easier. So, so I just think it's kind of important to even think about the people that came before us that that just made it just a little bit easier for us to take these steps that we're taking now.
Agreed. And you know, I definitely want to you know, touch base on you know, how the industry is changing in terms of representation, which is something that, you know, you just spoke to, Bassam. But before I do that, actually Liz had a great question here in the chat, just piggybacking on that last question, and that's, you know, what is creative risk taking mean to you, and what are the creative risks that you have taken, and can you describe the value of taking that leap of faith? So this is just sort of an open question, if anybody has any feedback on that.
I had a question to Bassam about this idea that you take care of your parents and the economics of it. Do you reckon that's why certain sectors of our society don't go into this into our industry, because of the expectation that this is a frivolous pursuit?
Massively. Yeah, I think I think like I see so many talented people that like I was like, you'd be such a great actor, but you went into engineering. And I get it, because how much of the grit and how much of, when you don't have any connections, you don't know anyone that's done it, how are you going to spend 5 to 6 years of your life, you know, sleeping on couches or couch surfing and doing, you know, a lot of small things, or even like PAing? Like I never PA'd because I just didn't, it wasn't like I didn't want to PA. It's just that I didn't have the privilege to do that, or to, you know, to do assistant jobs or anything, because I needed to make sure that I was always sending money back. And that was never, you know, a way that would be financially stable enough for my family. So I feel like what's important with some of the work that we're doing, and particularly I can speak for like, I can only speak about my experience and little communities that I come from, particularly the Muslim and the South Asian community, is that what's really exciting about right now is that you have people that are coming out that look like us, that are doing things. So it just makes it a bit easier to just take that step forward. So I think that's something that I guess was important for me to think. And I think the fact that like, Roseanne, sorry, I'm like taking up a lot of the airspace now, but just the idea of creative risk taking, I think that's why I give a shit to do this thing, is because if I'm not going out there to do something that's contributing to the language of cinema, it's not enough for me to say, oh, I want to dispel stereotypes and this and that, because the thing is that when you're already thinking that like, I'm making this to dispel a stereotype, I feel like it's going to be propaganda, it's going to be polemical, and I'm already disinterested. It's political. And what my interest is like, what can I contribute to the larger culture of cinema? Because cinema is still such a young art form. And I have a problem with this Western cultural imperialistic thinking, because that's what, like, we really, like here in the States, we don't have much to give back to the world anymore other than like cultural imperialism, right? Like that's the one thing that we still export regularly in like high doses, right, to the rest of the world. I was in London making this film that I made, and I would see like bus drivers that barely spoke English watching Friends, you know, on their phones. Like it's just the reach of American cinema and American TV. It's just this everywhere, as we know. So, but for me, it's like, how are we contributing to the language of cinema and growing it and adding things to it in a way that is more exciting? So it's not just about, oh great, now we just have more brown people on screen. Like I don't care. Like tell me a story that I haven't seen before. Like let's go talk about things in ways that speak to the human experience that I would have never thought of. I think that's more interesting to me than the melanin count in my film, you know?
Amen. You know, like, yeah, we take the risk because we have to, because it feels like, not that there's I don't want to get combative about it, but there's not a war. It's not war. It's like we are richer when there is more of different perspectives. And we take that risk of faith because we feel we have to. Because if not us, then who? Is that what you're trying to say? I mean, you are saying it, sorry, but like, yeah, is that what
massively? Yeah, and also just like last thing I would say, forgive me, I'm taking up a lot of space, is just that like when it comes to stories, particularly like immigrant stories, what I've seen is there's a lot of conversations around the dinner table in movies where people are speaking in English. And sometimes in households, English happens, right? But like generally in the stories that I know and the communities that I come from, we never speak English, right? So we have a lot of stuff that where everyone's talking like this and that, because there's this thing of like, well, we don't want to alienate this audience, right? And I feel like like what you just said right now, Roseanne, about like it's important for us to continue to push things in a way where it's like, no, we are being unapologetic, and we're also opening up the possibilities, right? So it's like, in a way, it's like, if we don't take the risks, then it'll be harder for the people after us to take those risks. And yeah, okay, I'm gonna shut up.
Does anyone else have any feedback on that question? Valerie?
Yeah, I think for representation in the media, I would hate to go to the other camp of the bigger structures that we're dealing with, but a lot of changes has to happen in the system as well. So, from the leadership that goes up to the higher ups and the decision makers, we just have to infiltrate them. And, that's why I think Roseanne is saying she doesn't want to be combative. I don't want to either, just because, and we're seeing a lot of that happen now because of, 2020 and the couple of years before. But I think because decisions are made in a creative world through empathy, right? So you empathize with something that you can relate to. And so it's, yeah, sure, there's baby steps. There's also radical steps that possibly, Bassam is also doing. But there is like a small baby step way to also, infiltrate the systems and work amicably towards total inclusion. And so, it's across the board. If we just diversify across the board from critics and, programmers and executives, people who are, who has the money and the financing, across the board, it will reflect what America should look like. Then I think we're working towards something that's going to be more authentic and genuine too.
Thank you all. So, building on that, and that discussion and the direction that we're going in and the sort of changing dynamics of representation and what that means. And I really do love, Bassam, your perspective, which is really about new and fresh ideas and storytelling and what are we doing to move forward the medium of film. It's not necessarily just about, as you said, like a multicultural cast in a production. It's really like, how are we moving the medium forward with our stories? And I have a question here that just came through. The question is about soft power, and does everyone's contribution to American culture, do you see soft power changing or building on American cultural imperialism? Is the drive for diversity changing the landscape? I guess really the question is, how is this move for more diverse representation, for more diversity in storytelling, maybe changing that soft power, that cultural soft power that America has globally in the industry? If anyone has any feedback on that.
That's a really big question. I don't know whether any of us can speak to what's happening with the industry. I think based on personal observation, obviously the narratives, the story that's being shared and told in the U.S. entertainment industry has become definitely more diverse. But I don't know how that's being represented as people outside of the U.S. perceive the American soft power. That really depends on whether these diverse stories within the US will be able to travel internationally on global streaming platforms like Netflix and also through other distribution channels.
Well, you're right. You're right, Hal. That is a very big question, and I think a lot of that is to be seen, right? It's to be seen as the industry is changing, over the next few years. So just sort of circling back a little bit to your filmmaking stories, your history. I know that pretty much everybody here has directed in documentary form at some point, and so. And, as for Roseanne, you've talked about, Banana in a Nutshell, and then adapting it into a fictional narrative, of course, and the rest of the panel here have also worked in that form. So I wanted to find out, when you made your first foray, if it was in documentary filmmaking and you moved into narrative, did you think that was the direction that you would go in? or were you really focused solely on documentary form? And I guess this is for the folks that have been working in both mediums.
I think maybe what I would say to that is, I think like what's so exciting about documentary is, and I've said this before, I think, was the lack of people poking in and you can just start filming. The autonomy is really exciting. But I also felt that the reach of your film can be quite small if you're not hitting a hot button issue of the time. So if you're not topical in a way, then you could be losing viewers, or your reach is less. So there's a thing where I always know that I'll always be working in documentary, because I feel like that's a place where I can constantly challenge form and do exciting things, where I don't have to worry about, a bunch of other people and execs and financiers and all that stuff. It can just be me and a camera and a connection that I'm making with somebody. When it comes to fiction, what excites me is it's a few things. And I think one is, I would say, is that to write something that I have control over is good for me at this moment, because I have 2 young children, and it's easier for me to work on that versus like, something that I might be chasing for 5-6 years, and I may not know what the final result will be. And then I think another thing that I would say is that generally fiction films, I'm seeing this shift happen where like documentaries are really excitingly taking a big step forward with like platforms like Netflix and Amazon, treating them as these like real events, which is really exciting. But generally fiction allows us to kind of travel to places in exciting ways. And one thing is that because I'm very hands-on with my documentary and very interventionist in the filmmaking and with my subjects, I feel better and I can sleep better knowing that, when you're working with actors, there's an open invitation to manipulation, and there's an open invitation to that kind of play that we're having. Whereas in documentary, it's almost like, how do I get where I need to get to? And that's only my approach to documentary. There's so many different approaches to documentary, but to me, I don't do the fly on the wall. So I think those would be the few things that I would say that are when I look at both documentary and fiction. That's not too scrambled.
I've done both as well, and I think that they're both completely different forms of I think workflow, because with documentary you have an impulse to be there and witness something, and then you have to shape a 90-minute piece from what you've gathered, and often you'll just have so much, because life is not a narrative, and so you have to find the potential in everything that you've seen. Whereas with a script, in a narrative script, you have the script, and you also in your head as a director, you have that potential, and you have that potential in your head already. And I think it's about taking the steps through acting, through cinematography, through sound, through music, and realizing the potential of the script, which the script is perfect when you have it, and then you have to execute it. And then documentary, you have all this stuff, and then you find the potential. If that makes sense. So I just think they're just completely different story forms, and I'm in absolute awe of serial documentarians who keep on making amazing documentary work. Because it's its own art form.
Yeah, I've been making documentary for a long time, but right now I'm also developing narrative projects. I feel for me, the biggest draw of documentary is that when you find that character that's so authentic and so dramatic, so raw, you naturally just want to pick up the camera and start filming. But at the same time, because of the limits in the documentary form, sometimes you won't be able to get the access to the best characters possible, or you won't be able, for ethical reason, you can't tell certain part of the story. So where the narrative form might become more appealing. So that's why I feel like right now for a lot of documentary filmmakers, they also want to experiment in the narrative form.
Just a short comment on fiction and documentary, more in the fiction space of, or more of into the, where it becomes kind of a hybrid, there's, merging of the two worlds. And it calls, as a producer, I think it comes from a place of economy, where if you want to, in a fiction setting, and you want to take advantage of the production value, a bustling market, or a rally or whatever, and then you plant your actors there, I think that's one, in my experience, one kind of situation where you can benefit from both settings. And then also I've collaborated with a lot of filmmakers that really like casting non-actors, and I think that also blurs the space between fiction and nonfiction, because if they are just basically being themselves, and you're pretty much just capturing their life and slowly planting that narrative storyline to them, the result is actually quite more moving. And as a consumer of a lot of fiction films, I love watching documentary, because everything just feels, it's always greener on the other side. It's always like, oh man, documentaries are just so real and gritty, and probably vice versa. So that's my short note on that.
I totally agree with what everybody just said. I actually started out in fiction. I was on the fiction track when I was at film school, and made short fiction films. But I had to take, for the MFA program, I actually had to take a history of documentary class that was really life-changing and got me really interested in documentary filmmaking. I think one of the things is that documentary is more accessible, but I would say that the training in fiction, particularly in screenwriting, I actually find myself, especially when I'm editing, I actually find myself using what I learned in screenwriting class in the editing process, thinking about the 3-act structure, thinking about what I learned about how long each act should be, and things like, having setup and payoffs, and thinking about story development, thinking about, how you can have a beginning, middle, end, and character arc. So those kind of things that I learned from fiction filmmaking, I feel like it's been really helpful when I'm making a documentary.
Thank you so much. I love all of your feedback on this documentary versus narrative medium. We are actually, surprisingly, this has gone really fast. We're actually getting close to the hour already, so I don't want to keep everybody too long. I know Bassam has limited time here as well. But before we go, I just really wanted to make sure we sort of circle back on just a couple of questions, and really about what you're working on and what you're up to now, and moving on to maybe advice that you would have for aspiring filmmakers. So for the first question, 2020 obviously has been an extremely challenging year with COVID-19 and everything that's been happening. So I was just wondering if you could sort of talk a little bit about, maybe how the pandemic or everything that's happening in the world has sort of impacted your plans or as a storyteller, and maybe how that's changed or altered what you're up to and what you're working on next.
I'll go ahead.
Is it okay?
Yeah. You go ahead. No, you go.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because I think I might have to bounce in a second. One thing that I just wanted to say about this is that I think this is the most exciting time for a young filmmaker or someone that's emerging to start working on something, because you just have to look. What I realized was, I always think back on like that moment in my life where I was like I made my first film, and then I got fired off of a few projects that were of hire for other people, other producers, and I just wasn't the good director for it. And I remember feeling so down. And then what I had to do is I had to look what's in my backyard, what, like I had to ask a few simple questions, like what is it that only I can film, and what is it that I have access to? And I feel like, if we can just answer those two questions, right? And what is that burning? And I think something that you mentioned earlier, Roseanne, about the impulse and that drive. And what is it that, like the resources that you have around you, and what is it that only you can do with those resources? I think that's where really exciting things can start popping off that way. That was how I did Ghost of Sugarland. And I think that's how sometimes we do some of our best and most personal work. And even now, like as I'm working and trying to write and, be a good parent to my kids and stuff, it's like, it's a constant battle. And I think just the last thing I want to say about is like this idea of success and how we look at it. And I think I'm trying to learn to measure success based on the things that I can control, which is like me not like losing my cool with my kids right now, or like something else, right? But it's like I can only measure success with the things I can control. So I may not know if I'll ever make another film again, right? Like I think all of us maybe at this point have had these incredible ideas of where our films would go. I think if like you premiered at Berlin and then the world shuts down, it's like, oh my God, what do you do now? And I think to reassess, to recalibrate, and to just know that like you have to, if I can just measure success with the little things that I know I can control, which is like, my temperament, which is my work ethic and how I treat others, then I think I can hope that maybe perhaps something might come along or may not, but at least I know that I've done my best in being a good person. So that's all I'd like to say.
What I've loved about this pandemic is Zoom meetings where I can see, I hope that's not too creepy, but I can see that you're sitting in your car with your kids, you're being a dad, you're being a good dad, a patient dad, and I've had meetings with studio executives while they're sitting on the floor of their childhood home, or they're in their bed because there's nowhere else in the apartment that they can take the meeting, and I just think that it's empathy building. Like I love that connection, and I also agree with you that we are not defined by our productivity. We're so sort of set with being, am I busy enough? Am I always working? Or do I have enough things on my slate? And something that I've certainly appreciated about, the silver lining, obviously I'd rather the pandemic didn't happen. But now that it has happened, I believe that I can now take a breath and be like, I am not my productivity. My worth is not defined by how productive or successful I am, whatever the hell that means. So that's certainly something that I've taken out of this time, and will continue to.
Thank you. And thank you, Bassam. And I understand if you have to hop off camera and drive the kids home, no worries. A big, huge mahalo for you joining us, and give them all our aloha.
Thank you. And honestly, I would love to connect with all the filmmakers on this as well. I love everybody's work. I haven't seen everybody's work, but I'm just such a fan of everyone and everyone pouring their hearts out and being so honest. It's just so exciting to be on this panel, and I'm so honored to be on the panel with all of y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, just quickly, I think the worst thing about the pandemic is that we won't be able to get together and share a beer. I'm looking forward to getting together after this is all over. But I think I echo everybody, what everyone has said, is that as filmmakers, we can always find ways to find projects we have access to and start working during the pandemic. And secondly, I think it's been amazing. I have 2 5-year-olds. This pandemic has really allowed me to spend so much time with them, sometimes too much, but I really get to understand how they live through their life on a day-to-day basis and see they grow. It's been amazing. I think there's always a silver lining in everything.
Definitely. Valerie or Yi, any notes on the year?
Yeah, thank you for having us again. And I agree with how about missing going to Hawaii at this time of year. That would have been awesome. But yeah, for the 2020 of it all, I just hope that everyone's just hanging in there. And advice to, I guess, the filmmakers would be for me at least, it worked, is to embrace your failures and rejections and mistakes, because you can only learn from them. And, it makes you tougher. And, there's a certain spirit that you need to have if you're going to do this for a living, or, aspire to be a filmmaker. So have some thick skin, don't give up. And yeah, even when a pandemic is in your way, I think we should all just keep going. And again, we're not just filmmakers, we're human beings too. So life goes on. This might be a chapter in our, our long lives. And this is the chapter where we made a wonderful film and went on this panel, but life goes on and there's other things in our lives that are worth, living for. And, definitely the self-care of it all is really important around this time.
Yeah, I agree with everyone that I certainly miss seeing everyone in person and seeing the audiences in the theater. But yeah, it's been really amazing how festivals have been able to adapt and everything is virtual and online, and the industry really has adapted. And I think there are certainly challenges in terms of having a film being distributed this year, not being able to go to festivals in person and connecting with everyone, with distributors and that sort of thing. But it's been really really great to see how the industry has really adapted, and we're still able to have festivals virtually and connect our films with audience. And even though it's a year of pandemic, we have the highest voter turnout. People voted. That's great. That's amazing.
Thank you, Yi. So now that we're coming to the end of our discussion, does anyone have any last comments that they would like to add before we go today? This is completely open. If you do, before we wrap up.
Anna, invite us back, okay?
Yes, in person to hold.
Yes.
We can properly welcome you and give you lays, and we love to have you all here. We definitely hope to do that in the future. And I know for me and the whole HIFF team, we're very excited to see what projects you all bring us next. And we're looking forward to that. So definitely.
Yeah, and from the Vilcek Foundation too, how I know you're in New York, but when anyone here is in New York, and I know when Anna's in New York, we always invite her by, and we look forward to when we can, have folks back in our office in New York and really celebrate with everybody in person. But it's, from our end, it's been really exciting to connect with everybody who's on panel today and who's been part of New American Perspectives, and to be able to have these open conversations. So just thank you all for your time and openness and vulnerability. It's really, it means a lot. So thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Well, I just want to go over some, quick housekeeping bits and mahalos, and then we'll be signing off today. For our audience at home, for all of these of you who are watching on Facebook, please check out all of the wonderful films from these filmmakers in the program if you have not already. Also, if you're looking for more in-depth individual conversations with all of our filmmakers here, we do have Q&As with each filmmaker in this program, and you can find those available on our Facebook feed, on our HIFF.org film listings, and also if you're in the streaming app and the film is on streaming, you can watch those discussions directly in the streaming app as a bonus feature on that. So please check out those discussions with the filmmakers as well as the films in the program this year. Another huge mahalo to the Vilcek Foundation for all of their support. It's really this amazing partnership that allows us to bring these incredible stories to you and straight into your homes this year. So next year, we do hope that we can welcome everybody back into the cinemas safely. But we're very, very grateful for the program this year. And another huge mahalo to all of our filmmakers for joining us today. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of our sponsors, HIFF Ohana members, board that help HIFF happen. And I hope that everybody has a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.